All right. Good evening. Welcome back. I'm still thinking about the Batman movie. I can't wait to watch it again. But while I'm here, I might as well get some practice in. So once again, I'm back trying to learn via teaching, learn OP via teaching, and really just reflect on this was a really good movie still. So the Batman just came out this past weekend. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. I personally am going to be watching it a couple times. But I made a video yesterday just to begin getting it out of my system, so to speak. And this is going to be part two, where I talk about the decidery nature of this movie and what I learned about deciders through this movie and through, I guess, just the writing of it and how things were positioned and framed. Because I'm not a decider, I'm an observer, okay? I don't fucking care like about the tribe that much. But this movie kind of made me see it, especially from the DI point of view, right? Now, what I'll do, I will not give spoilers, okay? And honestly, I haven't even finished the movie yet. I only saw the first 2 minutes or 2 hours. Sorry, 2 hours. It's a 3-hour movie, so just be careful of that if you go in. Make sure you use the bathroom and all that. But one thing I will definitely say is there will be no major spoilers in this movie. And then I will also make sure that I try and tie things into the official definitions as much as possible, okay? So let me first give you just a recap of the film in a non-spoilery way, right? So The Batman, this is a movie about I would consider it, based on what I've seen, kind of an origin of Batman's character as he is known to most of the people who know the comics or who watch the old films. But what I mean by that is this is a young Batman, right? So he's done his training. It's his second year on the job. But he doesn't have the, let's say, the respect that most people who think of Batman, at least, in the comics, have for him. Like, this is just kind of a random dude wearing a mask, beating people up in the night, right? And so he doesn't have the respect from the tribe. He doesn't have the respect from the cops, from the criminals, really. He's still building up his reputations, if you will. And this movie kind of follows his quest to, as he puts it, become vengeance or wreak vengeance on the criminals, really for killing his parents, in classic Batman origin fashion, right? So he's going about this kind of mission to change Gotham and get rid of the crime and things like that. But how do I put this in a nice way? He's very much DI and he's very much an IP in this movie, which is actually the first decider version of Batman that I've ever seen. Traditionally Batman, from my point of view, Batman's usually portrayed as an IJ, right? Who wants peace, who wants to have control over the city, and who has everything prepared, and he's very much about the plan working and getting rid of the chaos that usually the Joker would bring him, right? That's kind of the Batman of the Dark Knight trilogy. That's the Batman of the comics, the cartoons. But this Batman is an IP. He's a decider. And the reason I say this and the reason I know this is throughout the film, he is getting into conflict after conflict with person after person. And basically, they're... I don't know how to put this in a nice way. Batman's kind of an asshole in this movie. Like, he truly doesn't give a fuck about anyone's well-being, including himself, right? He does not care about anyone's well-being. If you are not... And then on top of that, the moment he thinks you are corrupt even a little bit, he does this like little snarl with his mouth every few seconds where he like looks disgusted. Like, I don't know, I've never seen a movie or a character just that disgusted with people. But Robert Pattinson, hats off to him for pulling that off, because I could feel it every time he was on screen, for the first hour or hour and a half, right? And why is that? Well, Batman, or Bruce Wayne, right? So in the film, he feels like he has the moral high ground. I don't know how to word that. He feels like he has the moral high ground. He's the only one who hasn't given into the corruption. He doesn't feel like he's a criminal. He feels like he comes from a family who was upstanding, right? Who had a really good reputation and were philanthropists. And so he's like, well, I'm obviously in the right and everyone else is in the wrong, so I need to clean things up, right? And it's like, the first thing I realized about deciders, or at least about the IPs, is that I didn't realize how real the shit was. And granted, this is from a movie, but usually when they talk to me, like, so I have decider friends, like, and had decider friends, past and present tense, and like they would talk to me about decider issues, and like I never really understood. Like, it's like I was like, every time they would talk about it, I'd be like, yeah, that's bad, but whatever, like just move on. But for some reason, the disgust in this guy in this movie made me start to feel like, okay, maybe there is something to this hating, hating the tribe or fighting the tribe all the time, right? So I'm gonna go to the definition, and then I'm actually also gonna pull up the IP Q&A just so that you can see what I'm talking about. So let's start here. This is from the class notes. I wanted to use this one because it's a little bit better than my notes right now. So the observers is up here, and the deciders are here. So observers are defined as processing things, categories, timelines, pathways, and not people. Okay, that's me. Why am I gonna go over a social interaction another time? Like, who fucking cares? Like, that's my default, right? But the deciders, including what I would consider pretty much Batman and all the people he encounters in this film, except for Catwoman. I think Catwoman's an observer. But Batman is processing people. He's processing himself, right? He's trying to figure out what to do, right? What's fair, right? What's right. And he's not processing the things. There is never a moment where Batman is worried about the things. In fact, one thing to actually add is that Batman in this movie is very much a double observer, right? He is pulling off shit. I have never seen a Batman this versatile in the observer realm, right? Like he's obviously planning, he's coming up with this plan, but whenever chaos would come up, he would just roll with it, like it. And I don't know how else to word it. It's like his gadgets, everything about how he would act, especially in the first 90 minutes of the film, was really, he would just navigate through problems in a way where I would be stressed out. Like, so I think that kind of adds to him being a decider, because he does not stress about the chaos that he causes every few seconds, when his plans go to shit, right? Now, let me actually also pull up, as promised, I need to pull up this IP Q&A. So Dave and Shan go a little bit further than their original definition, right? So they made an IP Q&A where Dave basically takes notes on what IPs are really like. And like, when I watched it, I didn't relate to it, obviously, but like I'm gonna just pull up the write out, and this is the Batman like in this film. So I'm just gonna pull this up. I'm so excited because I fucking love this movie. But let me see so Dave actually wrote some shit, so good for him, right? But I'm gonna read it because he reads very slow, right? So okay, this is just the first part. But this summarizes the movie. Like, so IPs. The major tidal wave for all IPs is that the tribe eventually outcasts them. This is set in motion by the overactive, relentless addiction of their first function. It is not one mistake that causes the tidal wave, but rather failure to catch thousands of little imbalances that all add up. Let me see here. I don't think I can change this. See, now I'm having an observer issue. Sorry. But anyway, let me summarize this. Basically, the IP gets up. They're thinking about themselves. They're thinking about their plan, their mission, right? To save the city, right? And when they're thinking about others, they're thinking about how they can get affection, admiration, and praise from the tribe. They're not doing what EJs are doing, which is jumping out of bed and helping others at the expense of themselves. So stopping there, this is the first half of the movie. I don't know how, like, if this is a spoiler, I'm sorry, but Bruce is an asshole to Alfred. He's an asshole to Catwoman. He's an asshole to, like, Alfred. I don't know. What's his name? Gordon. It's just every person he interacts with, he's just so non-approachable. Like, and the reason he's not approachable is because he's so focused on what he wants to do, right? He wants to save the city. He wants to put fear in everyone else. He wants to do it on his terms, and he wants to have this emotional effect on people, right? I don't know if he's FI or TI, to be honest, in the film. It seems more like FI just because the emotional component that comes with it. But, like, he tries, it's almost like he's trying hard to be hated. And, like, I don't know if IPs, like, do this on purpose, but I do interact with some people in real life, and I'm like, why are you like this? Like, but how do I word it? For me, that's me being critical on the outside. But the movie also does a really good job, in my opinion, of, like, getting in his mind space, if that makes sense, right? Because it is his point of view, right? So it's like everything from the first half of the film is like, it's crazy because the first half of the film is Batman it's almost like Batman thinks he's succeeding, right? So in contrast to like a lot of other films, the movie starts on like a really high note from Batman's point of view, right? Like he's the shadows, he feels like people are afraid of him, right? He thinks he's doing everything right. But there's a key scene, and again, this is not a spoiler, this is like the first 10 minutes of the movie. There's a key scene, right, where he comes out of the shadows and he's beating these criminals up to save this civilian, right? But the civilian, at the end of that, the civilian says, hey, please don't hurt me, right? And Batman doesn't register that. But to me, that was like the indication of, oh, Batman is really like, he is not fully, he's not fully healthy, let's say, because in his attempt to create this DI effect or this social effect on people, he's also scaring the people that he's claiming to save. And he has no clue. And I think that was kind of the first indicator to me also of the tidal waves that deciders are probably going through, right? Where, so for example, for Bruce, if Bruce is an IP, I mean, literally the first 10 minutes of the movie is him like celebrating himself, but then not catching that the tribe hates him, right? Not only the civilian, but then it actually cuts almost immediately to a crime scene where Batman comes in and the cops are calling him a freak. You're fucking disgusting. Like, what's your problem? And at first I wanted to empathize with Batman. I was like, man, why are they being so mean? But then it's like, as you watch the film, he's an asshole. Like, I don't know how else to word it. So like, there came a point in the film where I'm like, you know what? I don't know if you even want the cops to be nice to you based on how you're acting. Like, you're acting like a little kid who's just like mad that they're not getting their way 24/7, right? And but I think at the same time, it's like, because he's so convinced. I mean, that's where it's coming from in the film, which is brilliant. It's like he's so convinced that he's right, and he's so convinced that he's like the only moral person in the city, let's say. He doesn't really treat anyone else like a person. Almost, it's like he treats them almost as subhuman. And there's only a few exceptions, right? Like, so Catwoman's an exception, Commissioner Gordon's an exception, or not commissioner, but he's a police officer at that time. But Gordon's an exception. Alfred is barely an exception, right? Like, he kind of treats Alfred like shit. But there's only like a handful of people that he treats like a human. And that's also something that I see with people who are Saver DI, but especially people who are IPs. They have their little 2 or 3 people in like that they like are all of a sudden really nice to. And I'm like, okay, and it's obvious to everyone else, right? That they only like 2 or 3 people out of like whoever, everyone in the group. And they feel like they're above the law, right? They feel like they're above the rabble, right? Or the mob or whatever. But one thing, and I mentioned this in the other video, this video is going on a bit long, but I'm just excited about it. But one thing that I guess I did also learn is over the course of the film, right? And I think this happens to all deciders, is that he had a decider tidal wave, right? Where he realized that his view of the tribe and his view of the self was wrong, right? And I cannot spoil that. I cannot. But just so you know, I mean, just know around the 1.5, 2 hour mark, there's a point where his view of the tribe changes and his view of himself changes. And like and it's like the tidal wave that Dave and Shan talk about, where it's like he sees that not even that the tribe hates him, but like he sees that the tribe hating him might be legitimate, right? And then he also sees that the tribe, on the same token, the tribe is not as bad, not nearly as bad as he believed they were, right? Especially because now he sees himself as one of them, right? And I think that's specifically the tidal wave of the IP, right? Where they're like, they're seeing themselves above everyone else, but then what ends up happening is then they get like humbled, right? So like, and when they get humbled, then they can empathize with the tribe because, now the tribe that they used to view as trash, now they see themselves as equally a piece of trash. I don't know. So there's a little bit more empathy, and this Batman definitely shows that empathy, towards the second half of the film, because now he can empathize with the rest of the group, basically the rest of the city. And so anyway, I'm like, this movie is extremely decidery on the IPN specifically, but it's very much about like, who are you? What's your identity? Are you better than us? Are you worse? Are we the same? Like, that's what this Bruce Wayne is processing. And I think it's a very unique take on the Batman, because I truly think that this is the first time I've ever seen a Decider Batman. I think Batman is usually an IJ. And so they really went, and I think that's what's going to make this movie a bit fresh for people when they watch it. And if you're a decider, you might like it. If you're an observer, you might get a bit confused by it, like I was. But you know, there is a way to appreciate it. Anyway, so that's my little spiel, right? I'm gonna make one more video, and that's gonna be about that. This movie is very sleep friendly. This is a very save your sleep film, and I'm just gonna talk about that maybe tomorrow or Friday. But then I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think again, this movie is worth watching and rewatching. It's really well made. It's really good storytelling. And then I think, especially from an OP perspective, if you want to understand Deciders, this might be a movie to really watch and process, right? So anyway, that's my little rant. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great day. And I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.